What's up?
Hello.
How are you?
Great. How are you?
So great to connect with you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
You're at South by Southwest?
Yeah, we have this little adjacent event associated with them that I spoke at.
So excited to have you on. Such a remarkable journey. A little background, grew up in Philly, and I saw from the first moment that AJ opened the book to people climbing telephone poles on Broad Street and ripping your book out, three stories up on telephone poles and reading the book. Could you ever imagine something like that?
Oh, so crazy.
So crazy. I saw Snoop Dogg with the book. It's so crazy. So great.
NFL Gala.
Just wanted to talk about your journey. I read the book twice, got like pages of notes. Just want to talk about the Eagles journey and your journey and all the great stuff in the book. The book's amazing. Here we go. We'll get going. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. Jim Murphy, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Jim, it is such an honor to have you on. For the people that may not be familiar with you and your work, who are you and what do you do?
Well, my name is Jim Murphy. I teach mental skills to professional Olympic athletes. And that's what's unique about what I do is the focus on the heart, your spirit, your will. It's much deeper than sports psychology, which is greatly focused on the mind. We need to get deeper than that. We need to get down to where your greatest dreams are and greatest fears are. And so I help not just athletes and not just performers, but people from all walks of life, help them live a more meaningful, fulfilling life with a life that's more fully engaged more of the time.
Jim, what I like to do is get into your journey, how you created Inner Excellence. Also, to want to get into the moment AJ Brown of the Eagles opened up the book on the sidelines. I think it's the first time I've ever seen someone read a book on the sidelines. It went viral instantly. Let's take it from there. It's January 12th. Eagles playing Green Bay. AJ Brown on the sidelines opens the book up. They kind of zoom in on it. And at that moment, I believe in Amazon, the data I have, you were 532nd, 53200 on the list of books, and you rocket to number one after that. Take us from there.
Yeah. So I was in Dallas when this all went down, January 12th. I was in Dallas to do an inner excellence retreat. And when AJ Brown was reading the book on the sidelines, the Packers were playing the Eagles. I was in my hotel room in Dallas watching actually the Notre Dame Penn State bowl game because I hadn't seen it yet. And then I looked at my phone and see a lot of messages. And so it's interesting that time of my life. The first version of Inner Excellence was published 2009. And that was with McGraw Hill, got major publisher, bookstores around the world, Barnes and Noble. It was great. And then I took over the rights to it sometime, maybe 10 years after that or so. And then I republished, self-published in 2020, a revised edition. That's the one AJ Brown's reading. And in the total 15 years, I don't know how many copies it sold. I had an affirmation that said on my phone, I'm a New York Times bestselling author. And I would see that for years. And so people would ask me how many copies has it sold. And I would say, no idea, which is true. I just know that I haven't been called a New York Times bestselling author yet. And so my guess is over the 15 years, somewhere between 6,000 and 8,000 copies. If I were to give a rough guess over 15 years, January 2025, selling 2 or 3 a day. So maybe 20 or 25 in January before AJ Brown was reading it during the game. And then that week, 100 something thousand copies sold in 1 week. And so, yeah, really, really crazy. And AJ Brown, I saw him in uniform reading the book about a month earlier, 3 or 4 weeks earlier, but I hadn't spoken to him or knew how he got the book. I just saw that picture of him. And so I did not know that he was reading the book to get centered before every game and reading it after every drive. So I found all that out after I met him and all this went down. So what's interesting about that week, however, or in addition, is that Sunday I was walking around and my life was very slow and feeling kind of somber. My mom was actually dying and business was slow. I didn't pay off my credit cards in January. And I just written a book called The Best Possible Life: How to Live with Deep Contentment, Joy, and Confidence no matter what. And it's a book and takes inner excellence to a deeper level. Like, what is the source of inner excellence? And if I want to go deeper, what is it? How do I do it? How do I live this spirit led life? And that's what inner excellence is. And so I'm walking around empty downtown Dallas on a Sunday afternoon, the 12th of January. And I look up at the skyscraper and I feel God was asking me. Now I realize it was God at the time. It was just a thought in my mind. And the question was, Jim, would you rather own that skyscraper straight out for whatever hundreds of millions of dollars it's worth? Or would you rather have written, understood, and published The Best Possible Life about the spiritual life? And I thought I wouldn't trade it straight across. I would keep the book. I wouldn't trade it for any amount of money. And so I thought, well, I mean, that's pretty significant. Like, life is kind of slow right now and somber, but at least you got that, Jim. And then a few hours later, everything changes. In addition to that, a couple of days later, I'm in Philadelphia. A guy in the street asked me for money. And so I didn't have any cash. And so I went to the bank to go get some money so I can give to him. Tried to get out $300 and it said insufficient funds, 200 insufficient funds, 100. I get the cash. I find him. Give him some money. And then a week or two later, my mortgage payment bounces and my checking account's overdrawn. And that hadn't happened in years. And so when this all goes down, my life was very just kind of slow and, bouncing a check. And then I get confronted with that question. Would you rather have hundreds of millions of dollars and, or have written that? And then all this happens. New York Times #1 bestseller that week. And then it's there, everything else happens.
And that goes right with there's a great line in your book that you write, every beginning has an end and every ending has a new beginning. That philosophy you can apply right to this unexpected chapter that the Eagles kind of kicked off for you, huh? It's so crazy how beginnings have ends, ends have beginnings, and you're just in a new chapter just like that.
Yeah. So one of the things that I learned was that God is always working. I had no idea this was happening. And not only is he always working, but he's always training. We're always in training. And someone, a total stranger, told me before that when I was going through the toughest time of my life in 2010, this total stranger told me that everything that you've been going through has been training for you, and God's going to bring people from all over the world to work with you, and it's going to happen soon, and you're going to know it's from God. And that was an incredible time from fall of 2011 until just recently. It was this incredible life that God's given me. And I thought when she said, or when God said that everything you've been going through has been training for you, I thought it was just that season. Now I see my whole life has been training, especially the hardest moments. And this is something that I wrote about in The Best Possible Life in that book, because inner excellence, the subtitle is train your mind for extraordinary performance and the best possible life. So then the next book that came out this past November is called The Best Possible Life: How to Live with Deep Contentment, Joy, and Confidence no matter what. And in that book, I talked about this key component of the best possible life is having one foot in joy and one foot in suffering. And that's not a popular thing in Western culture, but that's so crucial. If you want to live an extraordinary life, not only do you need to get comfortable with discomfort, but realize that if I'm constantly trying to chase happiness, for example, the great American pursuit, that not only am I chasing my tail, wasting my time, but getting farther and farther away from my true self and what's possible in my life.
You mentioned in the book the different journeys you've had. Like your path includes playing minor league baseball for the Chicago Cubs, being a hitting coach for the South African Olympic team, correct? But then you develop vision problems during your baseball career. My wife is a vision therapist, and vision's a big subject in our house. How did developing vision problems reshape your understanding of performance?
Vision is something that I talk about a lot in the book, in both books. For example, judgment is one of the biggest challenges that we face when we lay down a negative verdict about self, circumstances, or others. And so what happens when we judge things? And the problem with judging is multiple problems, is that we lose our vision, we lose our curiosity, we lose possibilities, we lose freedom. And the other problem is, big problem, is that the very thing that we're judging, thinking, oh, how could this happen? I can't believe this happened to me, could be the very best thing, the most empowering thing in your life. And so I haven't really made a connection. I haven't really thought about it, but That's very interesting. This loss of dynamic visual acuity is why I had to retire from pro baseball. My vision was too limited. And now I look back and my vision was really limited at the time because all I can see, and thank you for sharing this with me, all I could see was the best possible life is for me to be a superstar, make millions of dollars, be on the cover of magazines. Every girl's going to want to be with me and every guy's going to want to be me. And that's what I'm going to get. And that was my vision. And now, thanks to your pointing this out, I realized God had a much bigger vision for me that I couldn't see. I was too caught up in myself, like, and too caught up in how I thought things had to be. And this is a big part of interactions is realizing that you don't know what's best for you and you have your plans and your goals, but interactions is, hey, let's go directly for your greatest dreams to live fully alive. That's what we want to do.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I wrote some of the best lines of the book that just really connected with me, a couple like core philosophies and principles of inner excellence. You write in the book, what's essential is invisible to the eye. Jim, we're in a culture obsessed with metrics and analytics and visible achievements. How do you, as a high performance coach, help people recognize the value of what truly matters when so much is not visible to the eye?
Yeah, this is really a core component of inner excellence is the problem that most people have is we're immersed in a world that's obsessed about temporary superficial things. And our circumstances are constantly changing. And you win some event, but then there's another event and it's never lasting, never fulfilling. So, how do we focus on how do we have some stability? Because anxiety has grown so much. And how do we reduce our anxiety? Well, anxiety is a mind with too many thoughts from too many concerns. And so, how do we reduce our anxiety? Well, we need to reduce our thoughts. How do we reduce our thoughts? We need to simplify our life. How are we going to do that? We have to have a clear purpose for our life. Otherwise, the trickle down effect is going to hit you. You need to find out what's essential that's invisible to the eye.
That's
So
great.
I'm in the Delta Lounge.
Yeah, yeah, it's all good, all good. No, I'll throw another powerful concept that I really connected with in the book. You put be unoffendable and unirritatable. And coming from Philly, especially from like an Italian family where everyone's just kind of at each other sometimes, what does this look like in life? Especially you say you're dealing with high performers where they're facing legitimate or sometimes not legitimate criticism, challenging personalities, people coming at them on sports talk, they're coming at them on ESPN, they're criticizing them on Fox Sports. Like, how can someone be unoffendable and unirritatable at the highest levels? How hard is that? How do you teach that?
So what happens to most people is that they get way too caught up in things that don't matter. And they like, for example, having to be right or having to be respected. Being respected doesn't matter because anyone could say something that could disrespect you. You know, if someone kicks sand in your face or says, "No, inner excellence is garbage," or it could be a million things that anyone could say that I could be feel disrespected about. And if I'm going to be offended by what a total stranger says, there's no way I can have stability in my life.
Mhm.
And having to be right, it stems from the number one need that we all have, which is to be the greatest need is to be fully known and fully loved, unconditionally loved and fully known. So love and acceptance is our deepest need, the deepest need of every human heart. And when you don't feel fully known and fully loved, especially by someone of importance, by God,
Mhm.
then every day is going to be seeking that. And then you're going to be offended when someone gives you the opposite. I want to be loved and accepted, and someone doesn't love it, and they reject. That's the biggest issue or challenge that we all face is fear and rejection or fear of rejection. And because our greatest need is that unconditional love. And so what I do with my clients in inner excellence is we constantly work on learning, growing to be a true self and to get into that flow of resonance where we're connected to what's stable and eternal and not attached to what's temporary and superficial. It
Wow.
starts with you need to examine your life and figure out, well, how do I want to feel in my life? How do I want to live? Who do I want to become? Who am I meant to become? And what do I value most? And then we get a clear purpose for your life, which this is things that we do at an inner excellence retreat. And then once you examine your life and get your clear purpose, then we can simplify. By definition, simplify is getting rid of what's not you. We need to get rid of a lot of things so we can get power to the things that are important to you. And then slow down your life. Like you can't slow down your life unless you simplify your life. You can't simplify your life unless you examine your life. So you can get it all narrowed down to one clear life purpose. That then we can get into that flow of resonance, and then the whole unoffendable, unirritatable, unembarrassable thing is that's master the ego. But how do we master the ego? Got to understand that the ego is one of the biggest challenges that you faced in performance and in life. The part of you that's always threatened and always comparing, never satisfied. Everyone has a mind that has that. And it all stems, like I said, from that need, that deep need for unconditional love. And that's why if you're a coach or a parent or anyone that wants to impact someone's lives, then you need to understand the deep needs of the heart, especially the deepest need. And, this is what the greatest coaches of all time have understood. If I want to get the most out of somebody, I want to help them meet those needs so that they can have the freedom to fail.
I love you said, focus on what's stable and eternal, not what's temporary and superficial. That's fantastic. Another concept of the book I just really connected with, I thought was so powerful. You wrote a couple times, your opponent is not your enemy, but your partner in the dance. That is so cool because it's so easy to hate your opponent if you're like in politics or whatever. How does this perspective transform, like, say, someone's competitive relationship? And when you see your opponent as a partner, not an enemy, how does that transform someone's performance that way? How can that move their performance?
Oh, it changes everything. And we're just going to make sure that everyone knows that this is a Phil Jackson quote. So when I read this, and I think I got this probably from Sacred Hoops, a great book that he wrote, talks about his transformation from this obsession with winning and as a player in the NBA to learning how to coach, and his transformation from just got to win and it's all that matters to getting better and getting into this flow of resonance. I would say, as I was, Inner Excellence was forming, three basketball coaches had a huge impact on me. Probably the biggest impact were three basketball coaches. Ironically, I was a college football player and pro baseball player. And so the three basketball coaches were John Wooden, Dean Smith, and Phil Jackson. And they all had very, very similar philosophies. I don't know about Phil, but Dean Smith and John Wooden never talked about winning. Just talked about getting better. And Phil Jackson, the opponent is not the enemy. So that is very transformational because if you let go of your obsession with winning, like everybody wants to, and if you let go of your obsession with what you want but can't control, then you've got options. The problem is people get so stressed. They're so attached to what they want in their lives and can't control it. Then they're not free. You need freedom to fail if you want to be great. So you need to be willing to look foolish if you want to be great. And when I think about your opponent is not the enemy, like how can I be great without a great partner that's across the net for me in tennis or in anything, pickleball? For me to be my best, I need someone to push me to get better. There's no way Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant or LeBron is great without those great opponents. Like Larry Bird needed Magic Johnson. That's what pushed them to be great. And there's no greatness within ourselves unless we help others be great. There's no way you can reach your full potential without empowering others to be great. And I mean, someone may be an NBA all-star and be completely self-centered. That's happened many times, but they could have been better. And
Yeah.
also even more importantly is you can be totally self-centered and make millions of dollars and be CEO of a company or anything like that. And yet, is it success if your inner world is filled with anxiety and fear and stress?
No, not at all. And you mentioned about you need others to be great. There's a great tying it back to the Eagles. There's a great line Coach Sirianni said throughout the season and playoffs. You can't be great without the greatness of others. And that kind of just goes right into what you were saying. And you start speaking about the thoughts. I love this quote too. You mentioned in the book, the greatest freedom we have is the freedom to choose your own thoughts. And how easy is it to get caught up in like negative thought patterns that's maybe some people carried around for decades? How can the average person approach that? Maybe they have these same thought patterns they're locked on and they're negative. How can they recognize they have these thought patterns and recognize there's a freedom of you can freedom yourself out of this, kind of exit out? How's the average person do that? When you have these thought patterns and you can't choose your own thoughts, it's just that negative loop cycle in your head.
So most people have 6 or 7 categories of thoughts they're thinking over and over and over. And these are reaffirming their limiting beliefs. So we all have beliefs and they all have limits. So inner excellence is a way to expand what you believe is possible, expand your beliefs. And how do we get to those moments where we're able to choose more powerful thoughts? Well, there's so many aspects to it, but a big part of it is not being attached to it's this whole mastery of the ego thing. If you're not attached to being right, for example, if you're willing to fail, if you have so much more freedom. The problem is when we feel like I know how things have to be, and they have to be a certain way. And if they're not that way, then I'm a failure or it's over or whatever. How do you have the wisdom to know, like, just look back on your own life, every single listener to know that, like, is everything you've ever wanted has been the best thing for you? Obviously not. And so understanding that we need to fuel our hearts because what's coming into your mind is there's a few things that are important to understand. Well, first of all, that you are not your mind. Your mind's going to have terrible thoughts and it's not you. If you think you're your mind, one of the 5 laws of the mind that I teach in the retreats is that you are not your mind. And so you're going to realize there's horrible things in the environment and they're going to make their way into your mind. And a thought has no power over you unless you give it power. And you give it power by letting it linger. And it's going to attract more negative thoughts. So we want to use tools. Tool is something you do in the moment when you're not present or you're negative or frustrated or angry or anxious. What do I do right now? Like it could be snapping the rubber band or singing out loud or doing the double inhale, anything like that. Helping you as we fuel our heart with everything that we watch, listen to, see, read, people we spend time with, that'll help you have better and better thoughts. And we have that boundary. And then we've less attached to those thoughts when we're willing to fail and willing to be embarrassed and say, look, I want to much more than being right in this moment or telling making this person believe that I'm right and he's wrong is to say, I want to master my ego and I want to learn and grow and get better and have more so I can have amazing experiences and deep enriching relationships in my life and learn and grow and make a difference in the world. Share that with my family. If that's what you want, you can do that, but we got to make a choice. Am I going to let go of my ego or am I going to have that continue to carry around that need? I've got to be right. And now we're going to fuse with our thoughts and then now we're going to have this issue of lack of freedom.
You came up with a great acronym for ego. I associate it with ego, PALMS. And you mentioned, could you mention what PALM stands for? I think that's just so great.
Yeah.
That's ego in one word.
Yeah. So when I think of ego, when I think of self mastery, I think of mastering the ego. When I think of mastering the ego, I think of being unembarrassable, unoffendable, and unirritatable.
Mhm.
So 3 things to think about. You can also think about the palms, which is these attachments that we have that's easy to have, especially in Western culture, which are possessions, achievements, looks, money, and status.
That's it.
And if you look in the dictionary, you see one of the definitions for palms is also this status symbol. And so those are 5 things that I think about, like that are easily take us out of our flow of resonance and into this constant comparison, never satisfied, always threatened way of living that we don't have to live.
Just two more great things I just love from the book. I pulled out of it and I'm trying to implement in my world. I love this. You write that we do not climb mountains to get to the top. We climb them to see who we can become. And that sounds like Jim Rohn. You familiar with Jim Rohn?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he's like, it's not what you get, it's who you become. Where'd you come up with that? And just, it's what the mountain makes you, not what you get out of it, right? That's the lasting impact, right?
Yeah. So when I think about inner excellence in that flow that I like to call the flow of resonance, or athletes might call the zone,
Mhm.
I think of surfing, snow skiing, and mountain climbing.
Mhm.
And I'm not yet a surfer or a mountain climber, but I've studied them a fair amount, read some books about them, and been out there in nature like that. And I think those three really make me think about that connection to nature, that selfless freedom that's so amazing. And mountain climbing, I think, is such a good example because the goal is to get to the top, but it's not why they climb.
Mhm.
I mean, if that was why they climb and the goal, then okay, well, just take the tram, like take a helicopter, like. But the whole purpose of climbing the mountain is from everyone that I've talked to and read about is because it makes them feel alive in the process.
Mhm.
Like just getting dropped off at the top, then you lose out on all the greatness. And that's like the Western culture is I don't care about the process. I just want to post something on social media.
Mhm.
So why would anyone want to do that? It's because they want to feel better about themselves. What do they really want to feel? They want to feel loved and accepted.
Mhm.
And they really want to feel loved and accepted by someone who's really impactful. Like if someone had 10 million followers and they loved and accepted, oh, like Joe's the man or Jim is the man, then Jim and Joe could be like, okay, I'm somebody, but it's never fulfilling. It never lasts. But if you connecting to say the creator of the universe and you felt that love and you were filled with it, then you wouldn't need it from anybody. Now you've got unlimited freedom. Of course, the problem happens is we're immersed in a world that's obsessed about these temporary superficial things that come and go and divert our attention. And so we got to constantly get recentered.
So true. Seth Godin, he's an author and he's been on the show like 3 times. And he has a thing about reassurance. He's like, Joe, if you didn't have that inner drive that you're speaking of and connecting to a higher power, and I just needed reassurance to keep going. He's like, Oprah could call you up and post on her social media pages to her billion followers. Joe's the best. Joe's awesome. Listen to Joe. Joe's great. That'll last me for like 3 days and I'm going to need it again because it wears out, right? In
Yes.
about 72 hours, the next week, I'm going to be in my head again. And I'm going to need someone to say, I'm going to need Matthew McConaughey to say something to keep me going, right? But like you can never get enough reassurance. But if you're stuck, like you said, if you're climbing the mountain to see who you become and you trust the process and the score takes care of itself, you don't need the reassurance, right? That's where the inner excellence drives you up. That's fantastic.
That's right.
One little tactic I took out, and I've been trying to roll with this when we go out to parties and stuff. You suggest go to a cocktail party. It's from the book. Do not say anything positive about yourself or even talk about yourself. One, it's very hard. But two, it's amazing how you can have other people talk about themselves for like a half hour straight, and not ask you a question. But it's so hard not to say anything positive. You could just say, "Hey, how's your job going? How are your kids? What's going on? How was your trip? Oh, I just saw you were in Aruba. Tell me about the trip." They'll talk for a half hour and they'll say, "Oh, great talking to you, Joe." And they'll leave and they won't ask you one thing about you. It's
Yeah.
the human condition. It's so hard not to talk about yourself. And it's so easy to talk about yourself. Why is that so hard? Is that the ego? Like what's in
Yeah.
play there?
Well, that's exactly what I'm saying. It's our deepest need is for love and acceptance.
Yep.
And if anyone walks out that door and they are filled up with love,
Mhm.
like just imagine you had anyone and everyone that you ever loved, and they all gave you the biggest hugs before you went out the door. And they said, man, we love you so much. And then they all blew up and became ultra successful in the world's eyes. They all became billionaires or have a billion followers. They came back and they said the same thing. They give you that hug, and then you'd be like, okay, I feel pretty good now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's why being fully known and fully loved by someone of real importance is so powerful. And that's why most everything that everyone does is to try and get some of that feeling of that, okay, I can relax. I'm somebody, I'm good enough. One of our deepest needs is that identity that I have this worth. And so we're constantly trying to feel okay about ourselves. And if we're not getting it from God, then we got to get it somewhere. So we're going to try and get it from achievements or possessions or looks, money, status.
Backtracking a couple questions ago, you mentioned how about mountain climbing and surfing, like two things that are just like epic challenges. They're just that challenge your ego, and you got to be the inner drive, not the outer drive. There's a map behind me. I've been training Brazilian Jiu Jitsu for like 20 years, got my butt kicked more times than I can count. But I have never got my ass kicked more. One time in my life, our family went to Waikiki, went to Hawaii, and we took surf lessons as a family. And it just so happened to be 6 foot swells that day, but they let us go out. I have never been so humbled and destroyed and almost scared but there's 6 foot waves in Hawaii trying to surf for the first time ever. Like that is so humbling. And if you don't, if you want a total ego crush, and then a few years before that, we went hiking in the Adirondacks in upstate New York and we got lost. We just flat out got lost and we didn't know where we were on top of the mountain. We just knew we had to go down. And it was so humbling and almost a little bit scary. It was getting dark. We're running out of water. We got small kids and we just took a wrong turn and we're lost. And that mountain climbing and surfing can really show you who you really are. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It is absolutely no joke. Awesome.
Well,
Wrapping up here, Jim. This is fantastic. Couple fun questions to wrap up here. First off, Jim, you train so many high performers and you work with athletes at the highest level. When you need to clear your mind and recharge your body, what do you do?
yeah, it's a good question. So one of the things in my morning routine, I have this 10 minutes that I talk about in the book that I just released in November, The Best Possible Life. I have this 10 minutes where I turn on this Christian music. It's my time to connect with God. And I turn on my timer, 10-minute countdown timer. So I'm not concerned about the time. I make sure it's counting backwards. And then I'm like, okay, I don't have to think about the time. I'm going to get an alarm when it's done. And then I'm just soaking up God's love. And so that's a crucial one for me because, like I told you, if I don't get it from God, then I'm going to have to get it from Joe
Mhm.
or whoever I meet. I'm going to try, I'm going to be needy. You're like, man, I hope they can help me be somebody or be more successful or have something. So that's one thing that's for sure. One thing that I do that I found very helpful in many ways is cold plunging. That helps me master the ego, that I'm not a slave to my feelings, and that helps me physically, of course. And then I feel it's also part of this surrender. Like it's like God and I in that water for about 3 minutes.
How long are you staying? Is it 3 minutes?
Usually three to five. It's been five lately, I guess.
I can do the sauna real well. I've done some cold plunges. I got to work on that. That is your mind saying yes, your body's like, no, thanks. I can
Yeah.
get there about 30 seconds to a minute. It's and the benefits are real. Now, thanks for sharing that. Jim, how about this? We spoke about a lot. We spoke about inner excellence, the ego, challenges, the things to focus on, palms, the best possible life. Jim, if you could have everyone listening take just one lesson away from everything we discussed, what would that lesson be?
Most people that are hearing this are going to be too busy to take anything away. They may get some things that are going to be helpful to them, but in a week, most of them will forget it. They're too busy. And ironically, they're too busy rushing around trying to get the inner excellence life. They want a life of deep contentment, joy, and confidence. And their plan is need to make more money and be more successful, whatever, have a bigger house or better job or whatever, so I can slow down, have more freedom. But that's the great mistake. Let's do that right now. If you continue on this path of busyness, just trying to be obsessing like me most of my life, obsessing about just being more successful, you're missing the most important part, which is part transformation, who you're becoming. That's the key. Because if you become someone who has deep contentment, joy, and confidence, become someone that has inner peace and therefore inner strength, starting with gratitude, that'll give you that mental toughness. But there's such a better way to live. You don't have to live your life with all that. There's so much fear and anxiety and tension in the world today, especially in America. You don't have to live in that. You can have that circumstance, but no matter what your circumstance, slow down your life, pursue a purpose beyond yourself, and ask God, how can I grow in that? Then you have everything else added to you.
No matter your circumstance, slow down and ask God. That's fantastic. Now, thanks for sharing that. Jim, two fun questions just to wrap this up. I asked this to all the guests at the end. First fun question, Jim, if you could spend a day with anyone, famous or not famous, alive or dead, who would you spend the day with?
Well, I think it was just go with right now with someone who's alive. I would say the first people that come to mind are the Obamas. I think I just admire both of their ability to make a difference in the world, and um, even being black and navigating that. How do you navigate a world that has so many obstacles? And I would love to talk to them, work with them.
If you could spend the day with Barack, what would you do? What would you guys do?
Well, I think he golfs. I know he shoots hoops, so I'd like
Mm,
to shoot hoops, play
awesome.
some golf, have some food.
That sounds great. How about the last question? Jim Murphy, if you had to get a quote or a saying tattooed on your body, what would that quote or motto say?
First thing that comes to mind is selfless is fearless, because I want something that's going to make an impact on people that would read it, not just myself. And so, I mean, it's short and sweet. I think maybe I'd go with something like that.
Selfless is fearless. I've never heard that before. That is awesome. That's a just like dropping the mic. It's a good book. That's your next book, I think. Selfless is fearless. That's
Thank
awesome.
you.
So I'd like to end, Jim, just with a couple quotes I wrote down that I found so powerful. This is some quotes I'm paraphrasing from Inner Excellence to wrap this up. Success takes care of itself when you take care of yourself. Your best moments always come from a clear heart and an unburdened mind. We do not climb mountains to get to the top. We climb them to see who we can become. The greatest victory is winning the battle over yourself. The guest is Jim Murphy. The book is Inner Excellence. The wide receiver was A.J. Brown. The Super Bowl champions were the Philadelphia Eagles. Big thanks to this guy right here, who's in Dallas, which is so fitting. They're in Dallas, talking about the Eagles Super Bowl in Dallas, Jim. From the South African baseball team to the Chicago Cubs to the crazy Eagle fans climbing the poles on Broad Street, winning Inner Excellence. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. Thank you for coming on the show. So much great information. I wish you nothing but success in the future. And hopefully one day, any chance we could have you back sometime to speak about the best possible life, maybe some point down the road.
Joe, I would love to come back, and I'm super excited to talk to you, being an Eagles fan, and because I'm excited about I'm going to be doing some work in inner city Philadelphia with my friend Shane Claiborne. So I'm excited to just how strongly Philadelphia has embraced inner excellence in myself. It's like the most incredible honor, and so I'm so grateful.
The book is everywhere on Broad Street. I know a whole bunch of people have bought it. I bought some copies for people. But Jim, thank you so much. We wish you continued success. And Jim, if people are looking for you and what you do online, where can we find you?
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram at Inner Excellence Jim Murphy, also on Twitter, Inner Excellence, and my website, innerexcellence.com. I have a newsletter that they can subscribe to. Just go to innerexcellence.com.
I will put all of them in the show notes. Jim, I'd like to thank you for your time. I'd like to thank Alexandra at UTA for helping us set this up. You guys rock. Appreciate you and thank you for all you do. Best of luck to you, Jim. Keep in touch.
Thanks so much, Joe. See you soon.
Thanks, Joe.
All right. Thank you so much. You guys are awesome. Appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
Bye
Appreciate
bye.
you
Thank
too.
you.
See you.
Bye.
Bye bye.